Chris, what are you doing?
Pro tip right here. Sharpie makes everything better. Got a few scratches on the derailleur, and this will just help it.
So if you're prone to crashes, keep a Sharpie on hand.
I'm not a big crasher, but I'll lay the bike down every once in a while.
You know, if you're a really baller, you would just put a new derailleur on every time you crash. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. What's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Build breakdown, build breakdown. The whole bike, of course, is decked out in Firebolts. All right, Chris, walk us through this bike. What are we looking at?
This is my 2023, I guess, Pivot Firebird. And man, I love this bike. This is it's my first new bike in a while, and I'm really happy with it.
What were you on before you picked up the Firebird?
Santa Cruz Bronson, it's a really good bike, but I wanted something a little bit bigger, a little bit slacker, to ride some trails that I wasn't quite comfortable with on that Bronson. And this is probably the perfect bike for that.
So when did you get this bike?
I've had this for about a year. And I was going back and forth between a couple different bikes. I test rode some stuff. And once I kind of dug into what Pivot was all about, I kind of fell in love with this bike, and I really know I made the right decision on this one. So Pivot seems to be all about the quality, and you know, we're kind of in the industry, so we see what brands have the highest quality and which brands don't, and you know, that's kind of been our ethos, is our products need to be high quality, and so I really appreciate Pivot's attention to detail on this bike.
You know, I never really introduced you. What do you do here?
My name is Chris. I'm one of the owners of Freedom Coast and Better Bolts. And what I do here, kind of whatever needs to be done. I run the manufacturing and daily operations here, but it's kind of we all just wear a bunch of hats here at the moment, and just kind of get done whatever needs to get done.
Rad. So how did this bike start life? Was it a full build? Was it a frame up? What did we do with it?
No, this was just I think this was the Team XX1 build. So it came with the orange fork. It has the Reynolds carbon wheels on it, which have been fantastic. And so most of the stuff is stock. I have changed some things as I've gone along, but it was a pretty solid starting point.
So you mentioned it had the orange fork. I'm seeing some pretty new bling on here. This is that new podium. What do you think about this new fork? This is the new Fox 38 podium that they sent us for some media coverage.
Yeah, so Fox has been really good to us, and our buddy Chris over there wanted us to give this thing a try. I'm pretty spoiled because Chris tuned the orange fork that was on here before, and that thing was absolutely perfect. And so when I put this fork on, it has not been tuned, but it feels almost identical to the one that he really worked over, which was like the last gen version of it.
So overall, this thing's stock feels like a typical 38 with an actual Pro Tune on it.
Yeah, to me, this versus the fork that came on here, this one feels a lot better. I also like that you have, you know, me not being a pro rider, when you do one click here, it's a significant difference. You know, and I think there's like 8 clicks of high speed or something like that. And so when you, in the old one, it was what, like 20 clicks?
I would be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that it's 28 clicks.
Yeah.
Combined though. The future Carter editing here, bear with me, it's about to get a little bit nerdy. In the video we said 24 combined clicks in the old Grip 2 setup, and that is correct. You get 16 clicks of low speed compression and you get 8 clicks of high speed compression. However, in the new Grip X2, which is what's on this podium fork here, you're going to get 16 clicks of low speed compression, so the same as before, but you're actually going to gain 2, you get 10 clicks of high speed compression. The reason that Chris was saying the clicks make a larger difference and feel like they're making more change is because the dial will actually turn quite a bit more. The clicks are further apart, and it does make more adjustment per click. So you end up with a actual higher range of adjustment in this fork. Even though there's more clicks, each click does make a larger difference. This is also in part to Fox getting rid of their variable valve technology with the new Grip X2 damper, which allows the fork to feel a lot more consistent, which is why the older Grip 2 dampers were sometimes a little hard to get right because they would adjust themselves occasionally. Last thing to note is Fox says that even though your low speed compression damper may have more than 16 clicks to it, sometimes they turn 18, 19, only the most closed, so turned all the way clockwise, only the most closed 16 clicks make adjustments. Even though you can open that up further, there's no more open than all the way open. So it's not going to get any bit softer if you keep that dial all the way in the wide open position. All right, back to the video. Thanks for bearing with me on that tech talk.
A lot.
High speed had a few less.
It's to the point where if you click it once, I don't know if I did anything to me or not. But now I can really feel like one click makes a difference, and I can really dial it in a lot easier. The only other thing I did to this fork is I added one token to it, and I did that on the orange fork as well. The bike was a little divey for me, stock, but one token fixed it.
That could just be a little bit to do with the geometry of the Firebird, not so much the fork, but just the fact that, you know, the way this bike is set up and the way your body positioned on it.
Yeah, and I've heard other people say the same thing, but it was, you know, it was a 2-minute fix where you just drop a token in there.
Rad. So, I mean, of course, we've got better bolts everywhere possible, and you know, with our sister company being Freedom Coast, we have the TRPs with the Freedom Coast brake levers on here. Those obviously weren't stock on this bike.
Yeah, this bike came with codes.
How long did you ride those?
I rode them for 4 years on the Bronson, so I knew what the codes were all about, and at that time I wanted to experiment with the TRPs. I was really in a mode where I wanted to try and go faster and beat some guys and improve my times on some trails, even though that seems kind of dumb sometimes. But
so the codes went straight in the bin.
One of the things that I put them on my son's bike, so they didn't go in any bin, but my son got a little upgrade to some new brakes. But one of the things I really noticed with the TRPs is that, especially compared to the codes, is that these are just super consistent. I like that the bite point, or the way that they grab, is somewhere in between SRAM and Shimano. It's not super grabby and it's not super like spongy either. It's kind of right in the middle, but it just stays consistent. It did take me a little bit of dialing in to get them correct. Our lever helps a lot, but also rotors. I started off with the TRP rotors and I just could not get them to stop squealing, and they'd either be too cold or too hot, and I just couldn't get them right. And I went back to these rotors, which are just 200 mil front and rear center lines. I generally do not go any bigger than 200.
So 200 front and rear. So I believe I said it in my my Bling Duro build, but I tend to stagger. I like to run one rotor bigger than the other. So I'll run a 220 on the front just so I can put a 200 in the rear. What's your reasoning behind the equal sizing?
I don't, my theory is just that with a 220 rotor in front, I'm not getting it hot enough. And I think temperature is one of the most important things when it comes to brakes. And I'm a pretty even braker. And now that I've been messing around with braking systems for a while and experimenting with brands and levers and all these things, I'm kind of nerding out on it. And I tend to brake like both at the same time, and then I will trail brake a little bit with my rear when I need to. And so I'm really on and off with the brakes, and with the TRPs, it's really allowed me to get the time that I'm braking during a run a lot less. So I can be on the brakes for just at the last second rather than 2 or 3 seconds before a turn. And so I'm not really building up the temperature that I need, especially in the front. So for me to go any bigger than that, I see diminishing returns, and to be honest, like, this thing stops so fast now, it's kind of crazy. We also had our friend Austin Dooley in here, and he was showing us his downhill bikes, and he actually runs, what is he running, a 200 front? And
he runs a 200 front, 220 rear.
220 rear. So when he said that, it kind of justified the way I was thinking, like, if that guy doesn't need a bigger than a 200 front, then neither do I. But he was kind of saying the same thing, like, he just doesn't build up enough temperature in the front when he runs a bigger rotor. So, and I think that's really the reason why you would run a bigger rotor. I think a lot of people think about it as like leverage, like, oh, if I have a bigger rotor, I have more leverage, I have more power. But to me, it's more about heat dissipation. So when I was running bigger, it would feel like it was never hot enough, or if I was going on something really steep and slamming on the brakes, I was just getting like cold to instant hot, and it was squealing. And so when I went back down to 200, I feel like it's just more of a smooth, consistent temperature. And that could just be in my head, I don't know, but all I know is these things are running so good right now, I'm not changing anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to mess around with your brake choice and kind of figure out what works best for you. Everyone's riding style is a little bit different, so everyone's gonna want to run a different setup.
Yeah, to each their own, but for me, this works.
I also see the Freedom Coast brake adapter as common with all of our builds here.
Yeah, that one I'm really happy with, and you know, Carter, because I would always ask you to go center my rotor for me because I couldn't get it. But these things make it so easy that I don't have to bug Carter anymore. So,
last thing on the brakes I want to point out, we did these awesome Jaguar brake lines.
Oh yeah, those are cool.
Jaguar has killed it on these quick fit brake lines, but these are the Kevlar Clear, I believe. It's got like a green tint to it. These were super, super rad. Not only do I think the quality of the line is a little higher than what you would typically get from any brake manufacturer, but also the install is super, super cool. You order a quick fit kit just depending on what brake you have, and then all you got to do is bolt the banjo on, or whatever way that your brake typically mounts. You cut the line in the middle, and then you just thread on this little black fitting because it's double-ended. They send the Jaguar line's just a 3,000 millimeter hose, and you just thread that right on. It makes it super universal no matter what bike you have. And it's a really nice touch that a lot of people stopped doing. It used to be something bikes did back a long time ago. They had colored housings, but it's not as common anymore. So it's kind of cool to bring that back. If you remember my Enduro build, the Bling Duro, that had those white clear kind of braided lines on there. It's a touch I've been doing on a lot of my builds.
Yeah, you turned me onto these, and it's been like the perfect finishing touch. I'm all about the little tiny things, and so like even on the better bolts that we did on the TRP here, these used to be silver, now they're black. So we blacked these out, and then we have the copper ones here that matches their gold pretty well. And so it's just a way better look than what it was before. But you know, even like the top cap bolt I did in black, and then the rest of the stuff was gold. So just stuff like that kind of separates it a little bit more from everybody else. Oh, we also have this bolt for the little frame cover things here on Pivot's bikes, which it's pretty cool. And when I got this bike, they were just silver or steel color. And I think now they're shipping a lot of their bikes with black ones.
If you're interested in this, because I know a ton of people are gonna be asking, they're on our website. They're M3x10 countersunk. Typically, a Pivot has 9 of these, but I always recommend ordering 10 just to have a spare on deck.
Yeah, and put Loctite on those.
Yeah, they will come out.
I learned that the hard way. One thing I would say about this bike is it's a pretty long bike. This is a medium. and I'm usually in between a medium and a large, and this medium feels perfect. The reach is fairly long, and so I'm running a 35 mil I9 stem to kind of make up for a little bit of that, but this bike really makes me feel like I'm like down in the bike rather than sitting on top of it. And so
I also notice this is my favorite grip, this DMR Death Grip. What do you think about these?
I only run DMR Death Grips in the thin size. I think they have 2 different diameters. So this is the thin one, and I think these are like their race compounder or soft ones or whatever they call it, which I would not recommend that. You have to replace them too often, but I wanted to try them. So I think the regular compound is just fine.
Coincidentally, that is something that Chris and I did independently from knowing each other. We were both just big Death Grip fans, and when I started working here, all of Chris's bikes had Death Grips on there, and I was like, no way, you too?
Yeah, it's the only grip I'll run now. And I think we probably have a drawer full of those. So.
We definitely have a drawer full of them. I see a big chainring on there, and I know that's how you're motoring away from me on those climbs. What size chainring is that?
That's a 34. It came with a 32, but I felt like I was maxing or spinning out, whatever you call it, on some of our descents here. We have a lot of descents where it starts off as just a kind of racy, maybe even Firebird descent where you're bombing, and I just was spun out. I couldn't go faster, so I wanted to try the 34. And I also kind of like not going into granny gear as much as possible, so I wasn't using my granny gear with the 32 tooth. So it felt like kind of a waste. So now I definitely use the granny gear with the 34, and if it's super steep, I'm kind of bummed I have it on there, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I don't know who would put a 30 tooth on their enduro. That would be crazy.
Yeah, some little guy with skinny legs or something, maybe.
Probably.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to try a 36 and see if I could still go up, but.
Do you know if you have clearance for a 36? I actually think this one might max out on 34.
Yeah, you know what? I was gonna look it up. And
we'd have to check the manual for sure, but I think you might be maxed out with a 34 tooth on this frame.
Yeah, we'll see.
We got our new Podium Hunter bottle here in the water bottle cage. We just released the Podium Hunter collection, just kind of like an homage to all of our orange products, kind of like a hunting theme here. Drivetrain wise, what are we looking at?
Drivetrain, it's all XX1. It's just what came on the bike, so it's the old axis. It's not transmission.
You do have the ability to go to it because you have a UDH hanger on here, which is something I don't have on my Enduro, so that's kind of sweet. You can upgrade if you feel like it. Do you want to upgrade, or do you think you're pretty set with the XX1?
For the money, no. I mean, it's a significant upgrade, and I don't think I'm really like beating this thing up, and it works great. I'm totally fine with the way it is. I have my hardtail also runs the same derailleur, so it's kind of nice to have things that are interchangeable and just a familiar feeling on each bike. So that's kind of why I just keep it how it is.
And then I see a copper cassette on there. Did this bike come with copper when you purchased it, or did you switch that out just to keep the details matching?
I think this is my second cassette. I don't remember, to be honest. I think it came with gold or the oil slick. And as I kind of built the bike up, I switched it. But that's my second cassette. It's like my third or fourth chain. And then everything else is kind of standard. I think we replaced the bottom bracket at some point. The bearings were kind of shot. But the carbon cranks have been doing really well. They're 170 long, which I think is perfect for me.
What cranks are these?
Just the XX1 carbons, yeah. The bike is Super Boost, so if you're gonna make changes to it, or if you buy one used and want to upgrade it or something like that, just keep that in mind because you'll need to spec that here.
That does make wheels and cranks a little bit tricky to find. They're not quite as readily available as some other stuff that's standard boost.
But I will have to say these wheels have been perfect. These are the Reynolds hoops. They're 34 mil internal, which is exactly what I would want. I like riding wide wheels. They have the i9 Hydras, and it came like that. And I've literally never even had to tighten this book. Like, they've been flawless.
So 34 mil internal, what's the reasoning?
I just like that it gives the tire a little bit of a flatter profile rather than a round one. I like predictable. I favor predictability over outright grip. It's just kind of the way I ride, and that's kind of why I ride these tires as well. So I have Schwableys. It's a Hans Dump 2.6 wide in the front, and then a 2.4 wide knobby nick in the back. And to me, that combo is the perfect combo. It's so predictable, and both tires kind of start to slide at about the same time. I don't like when a front tire goes before a back tire or a back tire before a front tire. I like to feel them both start to drift kind of at the same time, so that's why I stick with this combo. There are tires that have maybe a little more grip, like at the limit grip, but I like the predictability of these. So I've been running these. I rode these on old bikes as well, but to me this is kind of the perfect compromise of grip and then rolling speed as well. The bike came with dual assegais.
That's pretty heavy.
Yeah. It was nice going downhill. The Assegai is a really good tire, but man, climbing was kind of brutal. So we have to earn our downhills here. So I think this is a really good combo for me.
What seat post are you working with? Looks like reverb?
Yep, RockShox reverb. I don't remember how far this one drops, 170. Something like that. I was gonna switch it to a 200, but it's already out of my way so much that it's just not gonna make a difference to me.
And then what seat is that?
The seat is it's the SQ Labs 611, I think. I forget what the difference is between their models, but that seat's been really, really good. You can see it's a little beat up because it's been on there for so long. But I really like their seats. They have I think they do what more seat brands should do, which is tell you that you need to measure your sit bones and determine the width of the paddle from your actual body dimensions. So that's a really comfortable saddle. I can ride it all day long.
That is a really important note Chris is making about the sit bones. You definitely don't want to just grab any random seat. The seat makes a big difference to your ride. It's one of your main touch points to the bike. And if you don't measure your sit bones, which is where the weight of your hips is being pressed into your seat, you want to make sure you get a saddle that's the proper width, where you're actually sitting on the padded part. If you get one that's too skinny, you might be sitting, out here, and that can cause a lot of pain and discomfort. And that's really one of the main reasons a lot of people think that bike seats are not comfortable, and it's really just because you're running the wrong size.
Yeah, I'm really big on touch points. If you think about it, there's only a few spots where you touch your bike. You have pedals, you have the saddle, and you have your hands. And so I spend a lot of time focusing on those things, because at the end of the day, it's so easy to say, oh, I need a coil, I need a bigger shock or a fork. And really, to really enjoy your bike, it's where you grab it, it's where you rest on it, and that makes the biggest difference. So to me, that's part of the reason why we developed these levers. It's just that tactile feel, that thing that cradles your finger right where it needs to be. The small details like that make big differences. That's why I love these grips so much. I know them. They're perfect for me. I like that there's like a difference between the texture from here to here, so you know exactly where you are on that thing. And then even the pedals, like these are the XTR SPD pedals, and I have that same pedal on all my bikes. It's a good pedal because it's not super heavy. I like that it has a platform, so if I'm riding with the kids around the block, I don't need to have clips. and it's just a perfect pedal. And I had my last set for 12 years.
That brings up a really important point that we talked about in Jake's Crux build, which if you haven't seen it, you should go check that out, which we talked about consistency between setups. Jake was talking about running the same bar width and bar setup on all of his bikes. I mentioned how I use all the exact same brakes and stem size on all my bikes. And once again, here Chris is talking about using the same pedals and grips and brakes across all of his bikes. It makes a huge difference, especially when you're hopping between different rigs. Makes everything feel really similar, and it just takes one more variable out of getting used to something different.
Yeah, and I don't have the same bar width on my bikes. My XC bike is narrower. I think these are cut down to about 785, 790. And this is just the pivot carbon bar. But then when I moved to my XC bike, I found that having your hands inboard just a little bit more makes a little bit more sense. So those are probably 770. So it's only 5 mil per side, but still has the same grips, still has the same cockpit setup.
We'll have to get the XC bike in here and do a build breakdown with that as well.
Yeah, that one's a cool bike. That one's a little more quirky than this one is.
So Thomas and Chris both bought the exact same pivotless frame, and then they both did 2 wildly different builds. So it's gonna be really cool to do a build breakdown with both of those and show kind of the difference between going in 2 completely different directions on the same frame.
Yeah, I think the only other thing to really point out on this bike is that it's running the Float X2. A lot of guys run the coil on this. I think you can spec it from Pivot with either one. And when I bought this bike, there was no coils available. I probably would have bought it with the coil, but now that I've messed around with the X2, our buddy at Fox has been nice enough to rebuild that thing for me. And now it's running really, really smooth. I still get jealous of Carter's coil setup on his Enduro. Sometimes that thing is just like dead to the ground, but the X2 has been really good. And I have no complaints with it. And it's actually lighter than a coil. So I think this bike is like 33.5 pounds, which is a pretty light bike for a 170, 165 bike.
Yeah, for a big travel bike, that's pretty good. I think my Enduro weighs in around 36, 37, which, that has to do with the coil and all that. But this is a pretty rad build. Thank you for sharing it with us, Chris.
Yeah, no problem. It's fun. Having fun with these build videos, and hopefully we'll get some customer bikes in here soon too and let them explain what they're doing, because I like to learn from what other people are doing, and it's cool to see all the new stuff that's coming out as well.
Sweet. Well, we'll see Chris again when he shows us his really sweet pivotless.